Okay, we were talking about the Shah of Iran had been deposed, the Islamists had taken over, the Ayatollah and his students who had occupied the U.S. embassy and were holding them, the people in the embassy hostage. And Bill Casey goes over and cuts a deal with them in the middle of October saying, just hold them until the end of the election. So actually, they held them until January 20th. And literally at the exact minute that Reagan raised his hand to be sworn in, the Iranians released their hostages. It was their way of saying, deal done. When we found out about it and that the money the Iranians were paying Reagan for the military hardware was being used to kill Contra rebels in Nicaragua, it was referred to as the Iran-Contra scandal. Remember that? But Congress, concerned that the details both of the weapons and of Israel's involvement with the Bush campaign before the election might come out, even though now that's a matter of public record, Congress limited its investigation to events after the election. On November 22nd, 1991, 11 years after that election and after Reagan was long gone from the White House, Gary Sick was called to testify for a congressional hearing on intelligence and security, and there he exhaustively detailed where his reporting had led him and how Reagan and his team had committed treason. He said, quote, "What this evidence shows is a consistent pattern of secret contacts between the Reagan-Bush campaign and Iran. The contacts began early in 1980, from about the moment that William Casey became the campaign manager for Mr. Reagan. They continued through the summer of that year in Madrid, where the first outline of a deal was reportedly proposed and accepted, and where Israeli participation was first introduced." End of quote. Sick then continued in his testimony, quote, "The terms of the bargain were reportedly made final in the second half of October in Paris. The hostages were released minutes after President Reagan had taken the oath of office, and arms began to flow to Iran from Israel with U.S. government acquiescence almost immediately thereafter." Also in the testimony, Sick points out curious remarks made by the Iranian foreign minister to his parliament on August 16th of 1980. He said, quote, "We have information that the American Republican Party, in order to win in the upcoming election, is trying very hard to delay the resolution of the hostage question until after the American election." This is what the Iranian foreign minister said, according to Sick's congressional testimony. Sick points out that statement was made only a few days after Casey was reported to have met with an Iranian representative in Madrid for the very purpose described in that statement. End of quote. So we didn't learn about Casey and Reagan's treason until years later. Ronald Reagan went to his grave with this secret, as did his campaign manager, who he had made head of the CIA, Bill Casey. Perhaps for the same reason that LBJ told Everett Dirksen in '68 he wouldn't out Nixon as a traitor, because it would shock America. Perhaps for that same reason, the American people were kept in the dark this time, too, about the Reagan candidacy being treasonous. The next Republican running for president in a serious way was George W. Bush, and his brother, who was governor of Florida, knew that the only way George could win was if tens of thousands of Democratic voters were purged from the rolls. So Jeb Bush ordered his Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, to purge tens of thousands of largely African-American voters from the rolls, which she did. Harris kicked nearly 60,000, mostly African-American voters, off the rolls, claiming that these people, who comprise 3% of the entire African-American electorate in Florida, had been convicted of felonies and therefore couldn't vote. Turns out, though, that was mostly a lie. The list, based on a Texas felon list, led to tens of thousands of completely eligible African-American Florida voters, with names similar to Texas felons being denied their right to vote. So thanks to Republicans throwing all these mostly Democratic-leaning voters off the voter rolls, the election stayed close enough in Florida for its outcome to be in doubt after election night. The Florida Supreme Court ordered a statewide recount of the vote. George W. Bush sued at the Supreme Court in the infamous Bush versus Gore case, claiming that if the entire state was recounted, it would, quote, "create irreparable harm to complainant George W. Bush." Yes, that was what they charged. So the Supreme Court gave the presidency to Bush. And it wasn't until a year later, in November of 2001, that a group of newspapers completed their count of the Florida ballots. And when the New York Times reported it, they buried in the 17th paragraph of the story the bombshell that had the Supreme Court not intervened and had all the ballots been counted in Florida like the Florida Supreme Court had ordered, Al Gore would have won no matter how you counted the ballots. As the Times reported, quote, If all the ballots had been reviewed under any of 7 single standards and combined with the results of an examination of overvotes, Mr. Gore would have won by a very narrow margin. End of quote. Why was that line in the story buried? Well, the Times and the other news publications didn't want to delegitimize Bush just a month after 9/11. But the fact remained he hadn't won the election. Al Gore did. Al Gore still won't talk about it. Just like John Kerry, he's only spoken to one reporter on the 2004 election issue. The American people are not to know that the Republican candidate, George W. Bush, and his brother Jeb were traitors. So here we have all the Republican administrations in the last half of the 20th and early 21st centuries. Nixon, Reagan, Bush, and Bush. And every one of them took the White House by fraud and or treason, to quote President Lyndon Johnson. And now we have questions about Karl Rove trying to electronically rig the election in 2012 in 3 states. And Democrats and very rational liberals are saying, oh, there couldn't be a conspiracy here. Everybody would know about it. The press would report on it. There's no way you could get away with that. You're being a conspiracy nut. Well, just look at the Republican history of the past 50 years. As LBJ told Everett Dirksen, this is treason.